men pushing in the same direction does something amazing, and suddenly the world's a better place. I think it's really a shortcut to how we make the world a better place. And rather than looking at men as the problem, men as the poison, it's like men are the solution, men are the medicine in this situation. Let's get the medicine to the men so they can start living better lives for themselves and for their families and for their community and for the world straight away. There is no time to mess around.
So in your experience of men's personal development, from the early days through till now, is it an inclusive space? Was it an inclusive space?
I think personal development, men's personal development, strives to be an inclusive space, but I think there's a lot that stops it being. I think it has a massive branding problem. You know, like if I have to see another stag's head or some beautiful bronzed guy with a staff, and I'm just going to go mad, because that's just not representative of a huge amount of the population, especially men. So it tries to be. It has a sense of its own grandiosity and importance a lot of the time. So it's really put out there with an air of kind of faux spirituality, or, you know, kind of psycho pseudo intellectualism. It's like it's trying to justify itself. And I think that puts a lot of people off. You know, it makes it's yet another barrier. Like there's an educational barrier to being able to understand the harder concepts. There's a financial barrier to being able to attend lots of events. I know as being a working class man, how difficult it's been for me in certain situations where I've been one of a few working class men amongst what seems to be largely middle and upper class arena, because only certain men really have the luxury of personal development, the time, the resources. It does feel like a luxury at time, or very hard earned. So I know what it feels like to be in a minority in that way, and that's just class. So I can't imagine what it feels like in a lot of cases to be a gay man, a black and brown man, whatever your minority is, or whatever your protected group is. You know, so it has a long way to go, but I think it is trying. I know from stuff I do with the Mankind Project within there, it's at the forefront of what we do, is how do we bring this to more men? How do we make this? And it's not even bringing it to more men. And this is the interesting thing about men's personal development at the moment. I think what we need to do more of is it's not a case of bringing it to more men. It's a case of making it welcoming to more men once they do come. It's not just getting the things in front of people. It's presenting it in a way where it feels like it was made for them. And that's the bit I think it hasn't done very good up until these points, but it's starting to do much better.
So you were talking about the importance of inclusivity. Why do you think it's important to reach men on scale?
Because it's become urgent. We don't have the time. We just don't have the time to mess around with small groups here and wait for it to spread. Something has to be done en masse, because men are hurting. You can see it. Men are hurting. They're jostling for identity, and they're being exploited because of that. You know, people like Andrew Tate's Hustlers University, he's getting angry, vulnerable men to pay him money with a promise of them becoming rich and successful and having a Bugatti like him. Do we want more of that masculinity? Is that the masculinity that we want? We've not been very good, I don't think, within the men's personal development community up until this stage of providing an alternative. It's done too much in the shadows. And so we need to reach as many men as possible as quickly as we can to equip them with the best tools they can have so they can start leading better lives for themselves today. So they can be the men they want to be today. Because the men that they want to be is the father, the partner, the brother, the teacher, the friend, the mentor, the ally that they want to be. And that's how it spreads out. We get men to be the men that they want to be, to feel that they're contributing to themselves, to feel like they're connected, to feel like they're making a positive impact on the world. And then they spread that into their family. And so you have families that are the best that they can be, that are making impact on the world. They're as happy as they can be. That's better children, as happy as siblings, as happy whoever's related to them. It spreads out into their community. Suddenly they're there, they're role models, they're teachers, they're guides. Suddenly the communities start to thrive. They're allies, they're supporting other people, they're making things possible. Men work together really, really well. Men pushing in the same direction does something amazing. And suddenly the world's a better place. Like, I think it's really a shortcut to how we make the world a better place. And rather than looking at men as the problem, men as the poison, it's like men are the solution. Men are the medicine in this situation. Let's get the medicine to the men so they can start living better lives for themselves and for their families and for their community and for the world straight away. There is no time to mess around.
What's the recurring obstacle, or what's the biggest obstacle that you see that men face?
The biggest obstacle in a man's life is himself. I know that sounds a bit like a cliche, but another word for a cliche is common wisdom. Like, they're a cliche because they're common sense. The only thing stopping him being the man that he wants to be is the man he had to become. I think it's James Tillman. He has a quote that he says, "We bend ourselves out of shape for so long to try and fit in that we can no longer remember what shape we should have been." And that's exactly what he's talking about in that. Things happen to us along the way and we change it. We cut off a little bit of part of ourselves, or we hide a little part of ourselves, or we exaggerate a part of ourselves, all in an attempt to build a strategy to survive. Because we don't have a strategy when we're young. We're born, we don't know anything. We have to make it up. Each human being has to make it up as we go along. No matter how good the guides are, no matter how good our parents are, no matter how good the teachers are, we end up with this sort of weird botched life of like, this bit's been stapled on and I've tied this bit on with a bit of string and this is what my life looks like. And even if it's seemingly working well, we've learned good strategies, it all still feels like it's held together with string and glue by the time we get to about middle age. And then comes a point where we go, right, I'm suddenly at the crossroads of this life. Has this worked for me? And usually there's a deconstruction of everything that I had to create to survive, so I can get back to a sense of who I was before I can get to who I could be. Our biggest obstacle is usually the effective but dysfunctional strategies that have got us where we are today. And it's so hard to reimagine different strategies and different ways of thinking and acting and coping and behaving. But we have to, because otherwise we just repeat the process. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different response. Within the fellowships, there's a saying which is, there's only so long you can headbutt the wall before you have to admit the wall isn't the problem. And that's the same with our obstacles. You know, often we're looking outside going, if I could get this, if I could get just a bit more of this, if I could get that sorted, if I could get this done, if I could just be a bit fitter, if I could just be whatever it is, but we ain't dealt with the core problem. What's causing the strategies, that's causing the behaviours that gets the results we keep on getting? We have to change the strategies. We have to, and that's a story, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves and about the world that we live in. So we are, and the stories we tell ourselves are our greatest obstacle.
Right, take two.
Okay. So what I think I bring to the arena of men's personal development is a lot of experience. And because of my own journey through it, I had to pick out the pieces that worked. There was never a sort of roadmap through it, so I had to try load and load of different things. I've seemed to have always had a knack of making complicated ideas simple. So I think that's what I bring. I bring a sort of no frills approach. I don't want to be seen as some intellectual genius. I don't need to be seen as the greatest facilitator of men. I need to be just seen as a man who has a little bit of knowledge from his own journey and is willing to pass that on to other men in the simplest way possible, because it needs to be shared. It needs to be done. There's a need for it. And I think that's what I bring. And also, when I first came to men's personal development, and even now, I didn't see a lot of other working class guys. They just weren't around. And even if they weren't in any positions of leadership or as kind of thought leaders in any way. So I think I bring a bit of common wisdom to this stuff. I bring a willingness to connect. I don't want to be higher than, I want to be with. And I think that shines through in what I do, and people feel connected to what I do. And I just want to share that further. I think I just bring a lot of heart, a lot of mind, a lot of soul to what I do. I care. If you're watching this, you've probably heard me talking about the 4 C's before: connection, challenge, contribution, celebration. And I say that these are the 4 things that men need in their lives to feel truly fulfilled. We need a sense of connection with ourselves and with others. We need to challenge ourselves and challenge others. We need to feel that we're contributing to the lives of others and they're contributing to our lives, and that we're celebrating and being celebrated by others. But these 4 C's, they're more than just the things we need. They're actually a journey through men's personal development. I've been involved in personal development for over 20 years, and what I've learned is that there's a certain process, there's a certain sequence that needs to happen: self, family, community, and planet. And on top of those, you have connection, challenge, contribution, celebration. And on top of those, you have physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. So what you end up with is the journey looks a lot like this. We start with self first. If it's to be, it's up to me. So self, we work on connection. Am I connected to myself physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? So really, do I understand myself? Then, am I challenging myself physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? Am I contributing to myself physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? And am I celebrating myself physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? Once our own life is in order, once we've cleaned up our side of the street, if it's to be, it starts with me, it soon then has to become we. So we move then to family. And it's, am I connected to my family physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? We have to move through like that. Next thing, we've done it with our family, we move through to community now. We take it out. Am I connecting to my communities physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? Am I challenging my communities physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? And am I raising to the challenge of them? Am I contributing to it? Am I celebrating my community? Thus we go on. Only then, only once we've worked through self, got me in order, my family, got my house in order, my community, yes, I'm engaged in communities, we're working together, I'm doing stuff. Then we can take that through to the world and start looking at how we connect with the world at large, how we contribute to the world at large, how we challenge the world at large, and how we celebrate the world at large. And that tends to be a realistic journey for a man's progress. It starts with me, it soon becomes we, then it's us, and then it's all of us together. Working through those stages, connection, challenge, contribution, celebration, and looking at them physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. And that can be the journey of a lifetime, or you can move it very quick. But the more you work with others, the more we connect with service in there, the quicker it becomes.
3, 2.
So I'm working on this thing called Masculin EX, which to me is much more a movement than anything else. I believe it's the next stage of men's personal development that's needed. It brings together everything that I've learned over 2 decades of working with men and puts it together in a way that really brings effective service into the world. So how it's set up is taking what we know from men's personal development, what we know from organisations which have massive impact like AA and NA, and even little bits from how the groups are set up within the Scouts, and creating a simple program that each man can take himself through, or can get a guide who's just a more experienced man to help him go through it, just like people do in AA and NA, and build autonomous groups based around it, which help bring those principles into each man's life and give them a place to bring service into their local communities. You create a simple program where a man can get supported and can make actual change in his life, change within his family, change within the community, and starts building his self-esteem. It starts working by actually working. And it's not put behind a paywall. It's not put behind some hierarchy of facilitation. It's just simple tools shared everywhere that we can to every single man that we can possibly share it to for free. It's going to be given away. I'm literally going to take the best tools I know and give them away for free and encourage other men to do the same. Because that's the only way we're going to reach enough men. That's the only way we're going to change the world for the better. Helping men be medicine and not the poison.